Jesus the Son of Man. The journey through the Mediterranean world was a momentous period in the life of Jesus. During this journey, he made many contacts with his fellow men, but this experience is a phase in his life that he never revealed to any member of his family or to any of his apostles. Jesus lived his life in the flesh and left this world without anyone except Zebedee knowing that he had made this extended journey. Some of his friends thought he had gone to India because he was last seen in the company of Indians. In Nazareth, they thought he was in Alexandria since they knew he had distant relatives there. When Jesus returned to Palestine, he left everyone under the delusion that he had spent the past 2 years in Alexandria. In all your efforts to decipher the meaning of Jesus' life on earth, you must be mindful of the motives of Jesus' self-sacrifice. If you wish to understand the significance of many of his seemingly strange actions, you should keep in mind the purpose of his stay on your world. He consistently took care not to build an overly enticing and attention-grabbing personal career. He did not want to appeal to his fellow men in an unusual or overwhelming way. He was careful not to make his position unattainable to ordinary people. But above all, in everything he did, he submitted to the will of his heavenly Father. Always keep in mind the dual purpose of his self-donation. First, the reason he had come to earth was to experience the entire life of a human creature, in order to thereby gain full sovereignty over his own creation. Second, his mission as Son of God was to reveal the loving heart of his heavenly Father to the mortal inhabitants of all the worlds created by him. Not only in a way that only that generation would understand it, but in a perpetual way so that it could be recognized in all times and in all places. All other benefits and advantages to his creatures or to his universe were secondary and incidental. Realize that although this divine self-shedding took place on your earth, Jesus had to have these experiences for his entire universe. And this final self-shedding is studied by all inhabited planets. Jesus, as it were, made this tour of the Roman world as a kind of study tour, in which he attentively observed the different peoples, cultures, and social structures. Through this journey, by the time of his return to Palestine, he had a good idea of what drives man and what he is capable of on earth. Through this journey around the Mediterranean, he came into close contact with hundreds of people. He met and loved people of all kinds, rich and poor, high and low, black and white, developed and undeveloped, civilized and uncivilized, animistic and spiritual, religious and non-religious, moral and immoral. On this journey around the Mediterranean, Jesus made great progress toward his task as a human being of controlling his material, mortal consciousness. And his indwelling adjuster made great progress in spiritualizing his human mind. By the end of this tour, Jesus knew with all human certainty that he was a creator son of the Heavenly Father. The adjuster was increasingly able to bring out in the Son of Man's consciousness vague memories of his experience in paradise. Memories of how he cooperated with his Divine Father even before he had begun to organize and govern this local universe. Thus, step by step, the adjuster brought back into Jesus' human consciousness the necessary memories of his earlier divine existence. This unique tour was all the more fascinating because he traveled around as a normal human being. He was still the Son of Man. He had not yet achieved full mastery of his human consciousness. However, this process was in full swing in his mind because, during this journey, Jesus reached the highest, purely religious experience a human being can attain. That is, if man's material consciousness and the consciousness with which the mind is endowed reach the highest level, then these two forms of consciousness will merge. And this fusion was definitively experienced by the Son of Man sometime afterward, on the day of his baptism in the Jordan. The Son of Man experienced the great variety of human emotions, from the highest joy to the deepest sorrow. He was a child of joy and a man of rare good humor. He was likewise a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief. In a spiritual sense, he went through the life of a mortal from the lowest point to the highest, from the beginning to the end. From a material point of view, it may seem that he was spared having to go through both social extremes of human existence, but intellectually he became completely familiar with the whole. Complete experience of humanity. Jesus knows man's thoughts and feelings, urges, and impulses, from their birth to their death. He lived the life of a human being, was born, lived, and even experienced a very painful dying process when he was murdered on the cross. Not only did he go through the familiar intellectual and spiritual development, but he also fully experienced those higher stages of reconciliation between man and the indwelling thought adjuster. Something that is unfortunately equaled by few mortals on earth. Although this perfect life was not understood by his earthly contemporaries, his life was, however, wholly and unconditionally accepted by the Heavenly Father as being the fullness of the revelation of the eternal God to mortal man. And this was his true, supreme purpose. He did not descend to earth to live there as the perfect example for every child or adult. Certainly, we can find much from his noble life that exemplifies and inspires us. But Jesus did not live on earth to set an example to follow. He lived this life in the flesh through mercy. As he lived his mortal life in his time out of mercy, so he gave you the example to live your life in your time, by also looking after your neighbor. You cannot strive to live his life, but you can decide to make the same values important in your life. Jesus is the living path from man to God, from the partial to the perfect, from the earthly to the heavenly, from time to eternity. By the end of his 29th year, Jesus of Nazareth was just about finished with his normal human life. He came to earth as the fullness of God to be revealed to man. He had now become virtually the perfection of man, and he waited until his hour had come to be revealed.